I'd like to acknowledge, oh, there we go. We're in the people, the Nadgerine Kaurna people, the traditional custodians of this land, and the waters of the Light Regional Council. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present here today. Attendance, I think we have a full attendance of councillors with no apologies, no leave of absence, no non-attendance. Confirmation of the minutes. That the minutes of the confidential minutes and confidential minutes of the meeting of the ordinary council meeting Tuesday, 24th March be confirmed as a true and correct record of that meeting. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Michael, seconded. Councillor Martin, all in favour? It's carried, thank you. And the second recommendation, the minutes of the meeting, the special council meeting held on Tuesday, the 31st of March, be confirmed as true as correct record of that meeting. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Annette, seconded. Councillor Allison, all in favour? It's carried, thank you. Communications. It's a list of my communications up there. But before I get into that, I'd like to make note of the passing of Peter Swan, who was a former elected member on the 2nd of April. He was an elected member between 1970 and 1979 and was a council employee as a works manager commencing in 1983. Peter's done a huge amount for this community over the years. There's quite a list of things there. And you may recall we have the Swan Path, which is named after Peter and his wife. He was a highly regarded local historian and has assisted thousands of people with research into the region's history. In recognition of his exceptional service to the community, he was awarded the Citizen of the Year for Light Regional Council on Australia Day in 2014. So we acknowledge Peter's service and his passing for a great community member. A couple of things on my communications. I attended 2 Barossa character and area working group meetings. This is the group in Barossa that is looking at the character preservation GI of the Barossa region, which of course includes our region. And just to let you know that the group has appointed Laura Lee, who was a thinker in residence here a few years ago, and her team to provide a review of the recommendations that we should put to the government. So she's an outside person with very experienced, very dynamic woman. She's does a lot of work for the United Nations and all sorts of high flying things. So she's really but she's had experience with the Barossa Valley too. So she's going to do work for us to present a good viewpoint of that thing, that area. And there was a lot of us attended Anzac meetings, Anzac things on the weekend, so they're all very well attended. Huge, really tremendous support from our community on Anzac days. It's quite a major thing. Okay, 4.2. Oh, does any elected members have any communications they'd like to mention? Okay, 4.2 is request documents and correspondence to be tabled. I'd just like to table the draft 26-27 annual business plan and budget and long-term financial planning that was sent to you all by email on Friday. Do we have to have that accepted or anything, Corey? Is it's just done? So just to let you know that is now in the agenda for reference. We will be discussed later in the meeting. Petitions nil, deputations and presentations, and now it's our great chance to hear David's commenting for us. David Payton has been invited to attend the meeting and make a 10-minute deputation to council to introduce himself as the new state member for Nadgery and to receive questions from elected members. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Start off, thank you to both the Mayor and the CEO who, Bill I've known for a while and the CEO I've recently met. So thank you for allowing me to come and speak tonight. Is it just about it, more than anything, introducing myself? So there is no presentation. Here's the presentation. That's me. I'm a very simple person. I spent the last 3.5 years on APC Council, most of that as a deputy mayor. So I know what it's like sitting that side of the table. So I have a great understanding of local government, the difficulties, the challenges that you have on the ground locally, and then also when it comes to dealing with governments at higher levels and trying to get their assistance and help. So that's where I hope to come in, is to basically just be that in between, that connection between yourselves and state government. So I'm available at all times. My mobile number can't be hidden because it was on a council website. So if you ring me. You won't get an office, you won't get a staff member, you'll always get me. So I'm available 24/7. I'm not that this will be much of a secret unless you like most council meetings and there's only 2 people watching at the other end. I'm currently seeking to have my electoral office here in Kapunda. So that is my plan. That request is being put in at the moment. Yet to be denied, but yet to be accepted. So we'll see. I see Kapunda as very central to my electorate, both geographically is probably the closest central, and in regards to the growth, I think it has the ability to feed from here out into the smaller communities, but also feed to the growth areas of Roseworthy and Freeling a lot better than perhaps what Clare does. So that is my intention. That's about it. Look, I'm always about community. Community and community members is my priority. And if it works to their benefit, then you have my support. So that's about as simple as it gets. I'm happy to, if there's any questions or no. Jeez,
Yeah,
that's way too easy.
Councillor Collins got one.
One probably, but how many staff do they give you?
It's a very good question. I'd love to have that answer. Initially, I have 2.6, so I have 2 full-timers plus a 3-day a week. Staffing for government is dependent on your level of the government. So we're at the very bottom at the moment. If we change that to becoming a minor party, then we get more staffing. If you then become the opposition, you get more staffing again. If you become government, you get more again. If you become a minister, you get more again. So initially, I'll have 2 full-timers and a 3-day a week, 0.6, which is about 3 days a week.
Yeah, another quick. So you, in your electoral platform, you talked a lot about Electronet and the power line. I'm just, you got any update on that?
Yes, I met with Electronet yesterday, and they are about to release on Thursday their latest review from feedback, from community feedback. So at the moment, I can't say too much on it, but as of Thursday, I can speak freely of it. I'm positive that they are listening to the feedback of the community. They're listening. The next steps is obviously when they come back with what their response is to what they've heard, to whether the community then supports it differently or still doesn't support it or wish for more changes or want to stand their ground like some parts of the community have and just said it's a no, full stop. My personal opinion, it's a long way away from us seeing anything hitting the ground if it hit the ground. But yeah, Thursday, there's a new route and that will be released on Thursday. That's taken in the feedback. And I personally, I like the route, not necessarily saying that I'm supportive of the project, but the new route I think does answer a lot of the questions and concerns.
So that's 4A.
They didn't give me a number, to be honest, so I'm not sure what they're calling it.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks, David. The CEO just like to make, he's had some contact with us in text. He may be able to tell us something.
Thank you. So I had a phone call from Electronet about 2:30 today, and they've committed to give us the documents tomorrow, which will be emailed to you. So council will get it in advance of Thursday's public notification, which they committed to last time. They also are happy to meet with us in a similar format to the last time, which they committed to when there's new information to present it to us. So tomorrow you'll be able to read that, all going well.
Yeah, I think it addresses a lot of the concerns. Whether it solves a lot of the concerns may be slightly different, because I know my phone rings probably 20 times a day and it's always about NTX. So
It is a big issue in this area. It covers the whole area. One other thing that's pretty important to us dealing with the state government is Clare Road and the improvements that we're looking to do with it. And we're hoping that we'll get your support to improve that road, which we've been working with the state government for some time, but it hasn't had a full commitment to it. So we're really looking for your support.
yeah, the plan would be in the next. We've only done induction last week. Still don't have an office in Parliament House, which will happen in the next couple of days. So we're behind at the moment. We're not being that proactive just yet. I am personally in the community. But that is on the list of things to do in the very near future, is sit with the ministers, discuss the promises that were made. A lot, I think it's almost close to $60 million has been promised to the region during the election campaign. So it'll be to ensure that we get that at a minimum, and then more. So absolutely. If it's a need of the community, watch the news tonight and you'll see how I deal with this stuff. So yeah.
Thanks, David. Any more questions today? Can I just say it's fantastic news you're going to go to Kapunda, David. We've got great places for all your staff to get food during the week, and it would be really good to have you nearby too.
Yep. No, thank you. And
appreciate it.
I'm actually now a ratepayer in Light, and have been for about 14 months, moving from APC to Light. So not just personally want to see Light flourish, but yeah, definitely as a local member as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave, for giving us your time to come out today. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Adjourned business, nil. Action items. So if we go through the pages as we normally do, it's 8.1 action items, page 7. Clare Road's on the top of that list. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Great to see so many completed items on that list. It really is a fabulous effort of the staff to get those things completed. And 9, recommendations from committees. Audit and Risk Committee meeting. There's a recommendation made that the reports and minutes be received. Would someone like to comment one? Councillor Annette, thank you. Seconded. Councillor Simon, all in favour? Thank you. There's a recommendation 2 that the reports and recommendations of the meeting, like Regional Audit Risk Committee meeting held on the 14th of April, numbered 1 to 5, as listed below, be adopted. We would like to remove number 5 and speak about that. Does anyone else want to withdraw any of those items? Councillor Simon?
Yeah, through you, I would like to withdraw the revenue policy.
The rate, which is number 4?
Number 4.
Okay. All right. Any further? Okay. Would someone like to move the recommendation that numbers 1 to 3 as this may be adopted? Thanks, Councillor Michael. Seconded. Councillor Simon, all in favour? Thank you. All right. So we'll now look at item 4, the rate revenue policy review. Councillor Simon.
Yes, thank you. Number point 3 is that we adopt the rate revenue policy version 4, and one of the changes, or probably the major change in there, is some additional information or things about the rebate, or the what's it called, the high rate increase rebate, or whatever it is. And one nugget of information which I certainly wasn't aware of before is that, let's say we put 300,000 aside for giving that back, a rebate to people that have high increase of rates. Instead of that's coming off the actual rate revenue we have, we're going to add that to it, and then it gets divvied out to the people that have this high increase in rate payable. And what that really means is the general public subsidizes the rebate for people that have a high increase in the valuation of their land. So in reality, is that some poor bastard on average income with a $500,000 house is subsidizing somebody that has a massive increase in value by the increase in valuation of this land. It might be through, is it farming or residential, whatever it is. And I just find it completely unfair and unacceptable. So I'm strongly against that bit of policy, and I would like that crossed out or changed back to what it was. And quite frankly, I don't know where that came from, because it got snuck in there somehow, and I don't think anybody here, I might be the only one, but I think nobody actually realized that that's how this is done. Because I always thought it would just come off the total anyway, but that we're going to add that up. That's just unacceptable to me.
All right. Karen or Darryl, would you like to make a comment on that or suggestion?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I've certainly got a question from another councillor in the last week on that same matter, and I have looked at, and I think the governance team have a suggested revised recommendation, which effectively changes one paragraph in the policy, and it is the paragraph. Just let me bring this up. Yeah, just talk to where it is in the actual policy itself, though. So it's on page 159 of the agenda, under section 6.8, discretionary rebate, rapid property valuation increases, section 166. Now, there is a paragraph on the following page, about a third of the way down, which currently states, where council determines to grant discretionary general rebates rates payable, increased related rebates, the cost of funding those rebates will be incorporated into the overall general rates revenue requirement for that financial year, with the effect that the total general rates revenue may be increased across all land uses to ensure council remains financially sustainable and service levels are maintained. So if we look at the revised recommendation on the screen, effectively what that recommendation does is adopt the policy, but it removes that particular paragraph and replaces it with what you see on the screen, which I'll read out from the screen. So where council determines to grant discretionary general rates payable increase related rebates, the method by which those rebates are funded will be determined annually through the annual business plan and budget process. Council is not committed to any single funding mechanism and will consider the scale of rebates, overall budget impacts and financial sustainability when determining whether rebates are funded through increased revenue, expenditure reprioritisation or other budget measures. So effectively what that does is it leaves that decision up to council each year rather than locking it in as a increase to the overall rate revenue to fund the rebate.
That's all the words, so I have to understand it properly. You like your wordy paragraphs.
Darryl?
Thank you. While you're all digesting that, I actually think it's a sensible approach because in certain circumstances such as today, when a rebate might be $20,000, then council can easily absorb that from its total budget and pie. If it happens to be that we do all our work around service levels, around capital works, what we're going to deliver, and there's an unknown certainty around a larger rebate, which could be $500,000, then you simply can't just take it off the pie without affecting your service levels. So this gives council the ability to pull either trigger into the future. But most importantly, you have to decide that before you go to the annual business plan and budget and you put it openly and transparent to the community. So I think it gives you more flexibility and agility.
Councillor Simon.
I mean, but I trust that that's what it does. So I'm sort of happy with that. On a more general note, I'm totally against rebates anyway. I think they don't achieve anything. They're just a temporary fix. They're more like they're just not the real tool to deal with the underlying issue. But if what you just explained to me is what this does, then I'm happy with it.
Okay. Well,
I'll second that if.
okay, thank you.
Um,
So the suggestion is that we change that, the rate revenue policy review to the recommendation that's been put up on the board, so that there's, it's up to us to decide in future where the money comes from, not a set figure, not a set method of doing it.
I'll speak on that.
Yes, you can speak like Councillor, sure.
Thank you. Yeah, so the reason I rang Cohen about that, I went to the Audit and Risk Committee meeting, I heard him explain it to the independent auditors, and I went home and thought about it, and it just doesn't sit right with me for a lot of the reasons Simon said. But the other trouble I do have is I think that if we get a new council next term and we have this embedded and they don't know any way else to do it, they're going to use this model, which I think is flawed. So I think it's important that we do take it out, that the chamber will have the discretion in the year that the budget's done, rather than being told how to do it. In saying that, we did have a resolution of council 8 months ago, I think it was, to actually to do a total review of our rating system, and we've never done it to a satisfactory point. And I think that we really still have to review that in the future and get down to the nitty gritty and how we're going to do that. And I also do agree with Simon. I think rebates aren't any good, and I think the 20 grand this year is just, we might as well get rid of it, because it's why burden staff with applications of $20,000 when what Fiona's got enough to do without having to worry about that.
Thanks, Councillor Collin. Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Simon, I'll put the motion that the recommendation becomes the recommendation that's on the screen. All in favour? That's carried. Darryl, there's some talk about doing a rate review policy in the future that's been discussed several times.
Yeah, I think in terms of certainly induction for new elected members, given that we're coming up to the last year, I think rating should be a core part of induction. And I think then the new council probably needs to have a good review of rating and a rating review through an external independent person as well into the future. So this can all be fine tuned then. But in terms of, I think that's a good signal to send, is that it's really a decision for council given the unique circumstances. So I believe that we should be looking at a rating review, but probably with the new council to take that forward.
Thanks, Darryl. Okay, so we now move on to ARC 7.5, the draft 26-27 annual business plan and budget, long-term financial plan. Kyron's got a presentation he'd like to make about this item. Thanks, Kyron.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just wait till it pops up on the screen.
Oh, right, okay.
It's just loading. Okay, here we go. Yeah, thanks again, Mayor, for the opportunity to speak. So firstly, just around the purpose, why am I presenting? What council's being asked to consider tonight? So you have a recommendation from the Audit and Risk Committee to proceed to public consultation on the draft annual business plan, budget and long-term financial plan. And we did have some additional information that was provided to elected members via memorandum emailed off on Friday. And that was obviously tabled earlier this evening under correspondence. And that information was to support understanding of the historical rate movements, some updates to the long-term financial models and sustainability, valuation impacts and differential rating and rebate outcomes, which just had some discussion a moment ago, and also some procedural updates just to ensure council is formally considering the complete document. So that's these complete annual business plan and budget documents that were tabled earlier. So just to kick off with some context around rates increases versus CPI, which is what we've been talking about since February. And just wanted to make the point that CPI isn't always the benchmark for the cost of councils to provide services. It's certainly a benchmark for ratepayers' change in cost of living, but not always necessarily how councils' expenses increase over time. So our analysis shows that from 2020-21 to 2023-24, council implemented below CPI rate increases. So that's based upon the existing property base, certainly not the growth. This resulted in rates not keeping pace with underlying cost pressures and also a progressive deterioration in council's operating position. We've seen that over the last couple of years in particular. But from 24-25 onwards, council has been correcting that structural under recovery, and this particular council has been quite disciplined in raising rates above CPI to correct that structural under recovery. And those recent increases reflect catch up towards CPI index benchmarks, and obviously that need to sustain existing service levels if that is the council's objective. So you would have seen this particular graph that underpinned our analysis going back to 2020-21. And effectively what we've done there, we haven't had a consistent property data set in our rate system because we changed the rate system in 2023-24. So we've gone back to the annual business plan and budgets and looked at the average rates payable. So effectively looking at the total valuation under each land use, dividing that by the number of properties to get an average valuation, and then multiplied that by the rate in the dollar for that particular year. And we derive what the average rates payable are for those two main land uses, primary production and residential, and then calculated them each year across that time period. So you can see how, and this is for the existing property base. So we've taken off the growth assessments that have occurred over that journey as well. So what you will see is that residential, the rates payable have caught up to the CPI index figure from 2021, which is good. It's back to where that index position would have been. Primary production still slightly under. I guess what has happened in the meantime is the under recovery in those years. So where we have these actual average valuation rates paid below the index CPI figure and under recovery of rates during that time, which has caused the current financial position. Just in terms of a couple of key observations, one was in 2021-22, where the residential rate in the dollar was maintained, but there was a reduction to the primary production, 7.4%, and that wasn't redistributed amongst the rate base. So it was basically just taken off the total rate revenue. So that sort of caused this gap that you'll see in 2021, particularly for primary production, a smaller gap for residential. And I guess the other main driver for change has been in 23-24, where total rates increased was increased by CPI. However, that did include those growth properties, effectively meaning that the existing rate base had no real increase. That pointer's not working, but in 2023, you'll see that the black and the green lines on that graph basically plateau. Since then, council has been quite disciplined and has increased rates above CPI to get to make some improvements. So with the updated long-term financial plan scenarios that were provided on Friday, we've looked at CPI plus 2.5% being that middle ground, which was council workshopped. Audit and Risk Committee have confirmed that that's sustainable. We also redid the CPI plus 2% and 1.5% long-term financial plan scenarios, just for comparative purposes. They're not recommended. There's some quite big debt challenges in there for council, and certainly lengthy periods in deficit that certainly we're not recommending the council proceed with at this point. In terms of the assumptions, 26-27 CPI forecast, we've kept it at 3.7% at the moment, but we feel that that may increase in time over the next few months. And we're updating the value of general property data, which we receive weekly. So the latest scenario modelling, it does marginally improve the operating position due to some improved development growth. So some of the value of general changes on particularly Roseworthy growth properties, whether they be vacant land or conversion of unfinished houses to houses, has made up some revenue growth for council. But we're working on a long-term financial plan estimate for 960,000 in revenue for development growth, whereas the latest estimate from the value of general is still at 871,000. So there's about a $90,000 shortfall there that we're hoping will get made up in the last weeks of value of general updates. But just for context, if that doesn't occur, well, we've got a 0.4% in general rates change there or impact that would you'd need to increase to recover that shortfall. And I just wanted to make a note that obviously the framework that council approved when we started this journey back in February was that we would use the final RBA CPI forecast. So they haven't made any changes since about February, but they will obviously have an update ready for budget setting later in the process. So just a bit of a recap, how did we arrive at CPI plus 2.5% scenario? So, we looked at that broad range of revenue options down at the lower end of CPI plus 1.5%, at the high end CPI plus 3.5%. We had a look at operating expense reductions of up to 700,000 just to understand the impact on financial sustainability. What does that do to the deficit position? Service delivery, so what services are we reducing? Our organisational capacity in terms of labour costs and staffing numbers, and also ratepayer affordability. We listened to the council at the information session, used that feedback to understand that maybe the lower end, so CPI, the lower CPI plus scenarios didn't really sufficiently address the council's financial pressures. But at the same time, that high end of the CPI plus scenarios raised concerns about affordability, but also community acceptance. So we ended up with this middle ground scenario of revenue and expense, which we've developed up in more detail for your consideration this evening. So what's in that CPI plus 2.5% recommended scenario? The Audit and Risk Committee report delves into that in more detail. I'm not going to go into that tonight, but just some high level or some highlights are obviously the rating revenue increase, CPI plus 2.5%. That currently equates to 6.2%, and that's for the existing property base. We've landed with 420,000 in expense reductions from that total of 700,000 identified, and there is the Audit and Risk Committee report tabulates those line by line just so you can see where the reductions were identified and what we've been able to, or what we're recommending to retain. Staffing is funded at only 92% of FTEs. We think 95% 2.5% more reasonable, mainly because it limits our organisational capacity to deliver, but also it increases the operational pressures on the organisation. And the allowance for future office accommodation has been reduced to about an equivalent cost to what it would be to retrofit the Hewitt Centre. Now, that's not necessarily the way forward, but just from a financial modelling perspective, that's what we've used. So I guess the CPI and plus 2.5% scenario hasn't been achieved without compromise. It already includes some cost containment and some capacity constraints that council should be aware of during the public consultation if it proceeds that way. So that's the updated income statement for the CPI plus 2.5% scenario. Some slight improvements to the deficits from what was reported to audit and risk, but it is still 4 years of deficits being to existing. So in 24-25, the actual result, what we're forecasting for this year, and obviously the next couple of years before returning to surplus. There are some CAD borrowings needed to fund those deficits. So cumulative, that's about 1.66 million over 3 years. And there are still some uncertainties in the long-term financial plan, just in terms of the Bunyip takeout year. They might elect to defer for 4 years, as is their right. And also office accommodation, what will that end up costing, and what sort of model is council going to move forward with, potentially from 28, 29. I'll just talk a little bit about some of the proactive engagement that we've had with ASCOSA. So that was coming out of the council's information session. Can we proactively engage with them? So I gave them a call. They did say, and this was initially over the phone, that they will just provide general advice at this point, because the council's formal review wouldn't occur until 27, 28. They have offered to attend a council information session, so that could potentially occur on the 9th of June, which is immediately after the next scheduled Audit and Risk Committee meeting. And I'm sure the Audit and Risk Committee members would also be interested in attending that, if that occurs. So their commentary was that operating deficits extending 5 or more years generally wouldn't be considered sustainable, and a return to break even or surplus within 2 to 3 years is being more appropriate. So that's CPI plus 2.5% scenario. It nearly achieves that. So it's 4 years of deficit, so it doesn't quite get it back to 3 years, but it's certainly, unless you're looking at going well above CPI plus 3.5%, that's probably not going to be achieved. But it does manage those deficits within the more reliable early years of the long-term financial plan. So obviously, when we're looking particularly at our expenses and our services, we focus on that first 4 years of the long-term financial plan rather than the latter 6. So if we can deal with these deficits within that time frame, that certainly gives us a lot more confidence. Why is this important? You've heard about intergenerational cost shifting before, so it reduces the impact there, but it also avoids transferring today's service costs onto future councils. Obviously, there's an election later on in the year, and also ratepayers. I want to talk about some other analysis that we sent through in the memo around picking an existing or filtering out for an existing property cohort. So that's really filtering out the growth for our detailed property data from 2023-24 onwards, and what that means for differential rates. So effectively, once we filtered out those growth properties, we just picked the same existing rate-paying properties, and isolated them between 23-24 up until what we're proposing for 2026-27, and looked at the impacts in terms of rates payable increases. We looked at the two main land uses, being residential and primary production. What we found was, there is some significant volatility in terms of increases in rates payable in any 1 year, particularly for primary production, with capital valuations going both up and down at two ends of the spectrum for that particular group. But over the available data set for those 4 years, total rate revenue increases for both residential and primary production have been broadly equal. So if we look at what that looks like in terms of a chart, so this chart, elected members will be familiar with us plotting the percent increase for every ratepayer and listing them in order for least or negative increase, I suppose, through to the most increase in terms of those ratepayers affected at the right hand of that scale. And so the vertical scale is the change in rates payable in terms of percent there. I probably won't talk about land uses other than residential and primary production because we're talking relatively small numbers, but you know the majority of council's ratepayers are in those two key groups. Over that 3-year period, in terms of residential, the median increase for rates payable was 23.1%. The average is 22.3%, and the total is also 22.3%. So they're quite clustered, and you'll notice that that is the case because that purple line graph is quite flat. It's not more diagonal or sloping like the primary production property. So primary production, the median increase was 31.8%. Average 28.5%, total 22.7%. So what is impacting, why are those numbers so different? The higher paying ratepayers certainly influenced the total more than the median and the average. So what I would say there is the higher paying primary production ratepayers have experienced probably lower increases in rates over that period. In terms of what does that mean for differential rates and the ratio, with those totals being relatively similar, we're suggesting no change. So maintaining that differential rate of 0.8 for primary production versus residential. Okay. On to our favourite topic, which is the discretionary high value increase rebate. So as mentioned earlier, there's minimal financial impact in 26-27. We're proposing, if the council wants to adopt the rebate, to have a 15% threshold, exclude vacant land, and have a $20 minimum rebate. That is really just so we're not dealing with small amounts of rebates for a higher number of properties. Based on the modelling, the expected cost is about $20,000. So negligible impact on total rate revenue, certainly not a budget impact. So it could be removed. However, it does serve a purpose. So certainly our rates officer, dealing with those ratepayers that have had large increases, it certainly eases that transaction and that conversation. So we've got a similar graph up there. So this is just looking at the proposed increase from 2025 to 2026 with that 15% rebate threshold shown on there. So that really is only impacting those properties. We're talking 5% to 10% of properties at the high increase spectrum. In terms of numbers for residential and primary production properties, remember this is for that existing property cohort. The median increase for residential was 8.3%, average 9%, total 8.7%. Primary production, quite a different graph this year due to where the valuations have been landing, but certainly the median increase being 4.1% from last year, average 3%, and total 2.9%. I think those single year increases have been quite different for primary production in previous years, but they're obviously on the lower side for the 26-27 proposed period. So just concluding this presentation, the CPI plus 2.5% budget is recommended to proceed for public consultation due to, obviously, we've engaged proactively with SCOSA and relying on their advice. That scenario nearly complies with their 2 to 3 years of deficits advice. Obviously, it's been considered as sustainable by the Audit and Risk Committee. And it provides the best opportunity to reduce increases back to CPI in future years. So it does some heavy lifting early, but certainly it gives us the best opportunity in future years to get it back to CPI. And that's even though council's cost to provide services generally exceeds CPI. For the two main land uses, residential and primary production, they've largely experienced the same total rates increase over the last 3 years. So we're suggesting to maintain that 0.8 differential ratio. And we feel it's important to consult on a financially sustainable plan at this point. And just for some context, we know there is cost of living pressures out there for the community. There's no doubt about that. We feel that there is the capacity to pay increases is reasonable, and we've shown through benchmarking back in February that this particular council has socio-economic advantage, which is third highest in our benchmark councils. We do have hardship provisions for those that are genuinely experiencing hardship, and that's available to them. And I guess that the council rates do sit below many other cost of living expenses faced by the average household. So it sits well under the usual things like housing costs, food, health, medical, energy, and others that are also experiencing increases. So just in terms of process from here, so the plans that were reported to Audit and Risk Committee contain placeholders. So these completed versions that you received on Friday and were tabled this evening, for procedural correctness, those documents were tabled earlier this evening. There is one thing though, those documents do contain draft rating structure information relating to item 13.4, which will be considered by council later in this meeting agenda. So what we are suggesting is that the council's of a mind to approve these plans for public consultation. We feel that you should initially exclude Appendix A, pages 48 to 51, because they relate to item 13.4, and that matter will be decided obviously later this evening. If council does choose to differentiate by location, those pages can be added back in. So at least council sort of can see what's in those particular pages, but the process is to add them back in later. So in terms of an updated council recommendation for this evening, the first 2 points are in line with what the Audit and Risk Committee recommended to council, which is just noting that the report was presented to the committee at its meeting on the 14th of April, and also acknowledging that the Audit and Risk Committee concurs that those plans are sustainable as detailed in attachments 1 and 2 of the report. The third point is about receiving these documents tonight and approving them for public consultation and approval, but subject to the usual minor formatting and grammatical amendments, the removal of Appendix A, rating structure and policy, pages 48 to 51, which I just spoke about, and the provision of changes to rating sections that may occur due to general valuation updates. So there's going to be some minor changes, probably mainly impacting growth between now and week 52. I might just throw over to CEO Darryl just to see if he's got any commentary that he wishes to make before throwing back to the Mayor, if that's okay.
Through the chair, thank you. Firstly, congratulations, Corin, and your team for presenting this information. So it's a lot of work that goes into it, and for council for considering it. It's a lot of work that goes into it for everyone here as well. I guess when you're making this decision, it's a difficult one. It's always hard to raise rates above CPI, but it is also a legacy piece in deciding what council wants to, what financial position you want to leave the council in for the new council. And we look at the long-term financial plan, it considers CPI plus 2% for the next decade. But if we get advance of this at some stage, the sooner we get in advance of this, the sooner you can bring it back to CPI. So when you're doing it, you need to decide obviously what's the affordability of our ratepayers. Probably have regard to the ASCOSA in terms of they've certainly articulated that 5 years of deficit would not be considered to be sustainable. 3 years is more appropriate, but we're not going to meet 3 years with even the 2.5. We're probably going to be somewhere between 4, 5 or 6, but certainly 5, given that we've already had 2 years of deficit. And as I understand of it, one of them was a bit more of a surprise deficit. But it is what it is. It's the position we're in. There's uncertainty on the CAD, so we're assuming into the future we can borrow the CAD, but if there's 5 years worth of deficit, does that change the LGFA's willingness to lend us that money? So we don't know that. We'll find that out pretty soon. We have put in there a request for ASCOSA to be able to meet with council individually alongside the Audit and Risk Committee, which I think is a good way of getting to understand it moving forward. And then we've also got to consider the consultation as well. So what we've prepared is a whole lot of services, plans, capital works, which is in our annual business plan and budget. If we do something other than that, it's going to be rather difficult to consult on if we don't know what we're omitting. So it might be a prudent move to actually put it out for consultation, and then if it comes up with negative feedback, to be able to adjust according to that consultation, as opposed to putting something out there that we're consulting on full works or works that we don't know exist, because that will have a material impact on people, I would consider. And then I guess finally, some triggers you might like to point to, which was, and thank you for the members for bringing this up during the week. But in terms of the rate rebate, that $20,000 is probably a good way to be able to provide some relief to just to not try to seek to reimburse that. You've made that decision already to give council that lever with the policy. So thank you for that. So I think it's really, what do you do now to set it up for financial success, I guess, sustainability, and bearing in mind that the long-term financial plan has already been consulted on with CPI plus 2%. So that's just some summary from my perspective, but over for you to consider.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Kyron, too. Yeah, congratulations to you and your team. I mean, we've set out to be working on this since February, and we've given you a lot of feedback and a lot of discussion either way. And I note that we did recommend at one of the meetings that we'd accept the CPI plus 2.5% level. But I do note there's Councillor Peters put forward a motion without notice, which I'm suggesting we look at now, because if it is accepted, it would change this dramatically. Not that I'm not supporting it in any way. So, but I would open to, if you want to move this, speak on this motion you presented, Peter, if you want to move it.
Yes. At the outset, I'd say was microphone. Yeah, I'm electronic. At the outset, I would say that we are in a difficult phase with the war overseas and fuel, which has not just fuel but other consequences, materials, fertilizers. We are a rural council, not an urban council. And my motion without notice, I'm pleased you've brought it up, Mr. Mayor. There are a number of things on that motion that I've given everybody a copy of. It's quite concerning that we are in a third year apparently of rainfall deficiency, and people who are sowing crops are taking a chance. We're hoping for rainfall over the weekend. But difficulties there. I noticed that in the last couple of weeks, Seppeltsfield Wines, who are in our council area, had to sack 14 or 15 employees. So the wine industry is in trouble. We don't know what's going to happen about crop. Livestock values are dodgy. Stock feed is scarce, and general cost of living have to be recognised, and material costs I mentioned are affecting businesses, and this is why I've suggested that we adopt a minimal rate increase of CPI plus 1.5% as opposed to 2.5 to ease the pain that people are going to face. And so I'll leave that with you, and hope that you consider it favourably.
Thanks, councillor Peter. Is there a second to councillor Peter's motion? Would you like to speak on it, councillor Allison? I do. We all know about cost of living, but Kyron did mention that in his presentation. Would anyone, councillor Colin?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit late. I've argued for 1.5% since our meeting in February, and I agree with all points Peter makes. One thing that disappointed me about this whole process is we were told in February that we were paying rates. Our rate increases were CPI or less for the last 5 years. We've just been proven, that's just been proven wrong. So I can see Peter's argument, and if you go back to the table we looked at in 21, 22, I think, when we gave the big rebate back, that was actually our fault because we gave a rebate back to all primary producers. It was worded in the budget that it was to go to primary producers, but only their residential place of residence. So then we had to come up with another 300K. But what happened there was the increase was embedded into those ratepayers. So the next year, that increase is not even showing. So that is wrong that we only put them up in the 22, 23 year, a small portion. I think if you look at it, it would be more than that. And that is a little bit misleading. We've been, prime reduction's gone up 22% in 3 years. And I sat at the last meeting and saying that, and everyone was, like Dean looked at me and said, you don't know what you're talking about, basically. And here we are. We should have known this at the time, and I think I would have supported Peter's motion at the time, but now we are so far down the road that I think that it would be unwise of us to actually do it. But I think we have to be informed a whole lot better than what we have been in this process.
Thanks, councillor Colin. Councillor Dean.
Thank you. The trouble with primary production, of course, is that you've got broadacre farmers who get a big increase in valuation, and viticulture that had more or less zero for the last few years. I'm opposed to Peter's motion. I think the reason why I'm opposed to it is that we have had probably, I think, by far the most thorough process that we've used yet to analyse every aspect look at our financial position and our sustainability in far more detail than we've ever done before. We have guidance from ASCOSA, we have guidance from the Audit Committee, and we have our own analysis, which all produces, I think, a very clear recommendation, and that is what has been put to our meeting, and with 2.5% plus CPI. And if we deviate from that and go back to 1.5%, what we're really doing is shoving the sustainability problem on a year to the new council. We aren't taking responsibility for decisions we've made in the past. One of the contributing factors of our deficit in the past has been that we have made decisions to reduce at very last minute, reduce the rate increase, and without any significant change to the program and services. And to change those services, you need time to work out what you can change. And you can't really, I don't think, go to the community with an unsustainable rate increase and unknown service decrease. That is not transparent, nor is it fair to the group who ended up suffering. So consequently, the other thing I perhaps suggest is that the argument times are hard, which they are, was used last year and the year before and the year before. There will never be a time when people are going to be happy with a significant rate increase, but we don't want to get in a position of councils, as have happened in other places, where you end up being so far beyond the 8 ball that you might have to do a 14 or 50% increase to catch up, or a few years of high increases. We need to do this. We need to bite the bullet and do it. That's why I'm opposed to Peter's motion.
Thanks, Councillor Dean. Does anyone else want to speak for the motion? Anyone want to speak against the motion? Oh, sorry, Councillor Simon, didn't see it.
That's
Red
right,
light,
yeah.
sorry.
Just real short, I do agree that we're too late in the game to change anything now. I generally agree as well that we could probably try to tighten our belts if it's possible, but there's a different way to go about it. It's one thing that this is the 7th budget I think I've been involved. Every single time I said the same thing, and things just don't seem to go that way. But I think the way we're setting this whole thing is, in my opinion, the wrong way around. We shouldn't say like, oh, we want to increase it by this plus this and then work backwards. We should go the other way around. It's actually interesting. The LGH just put out a little article in Daily, I think it is, and it talks exactly about this. And if I may just take 2 seconds to read this little thing, it just says how rates are calculated. Guided by their long-term financial plans and asset management plans, they assess costs, population changes, and local needs, and decide which services and projects will be delivered in the coming year. Once these decisions are made, councils calculate how much revenue is required to fund them and consider other income sources. So this is how we should be doing it, and we just never done it this way. We always go like, oh, we're going to do this plus the CPI, we do this, and then we work backwards. We just should not be doing this. So yeah, I'm against the motion, but too late in the game. But maybe next time, if I'm even around, try to do it differently. That'd be a great thing.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Michael?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Bill. Keep this brief, and it's great to hear that we agree that rates aren't a wealth tax, it's a function of services. But I couldn't help it, sorry, Simon. Be that as it may, look, we have to play with the hand that we've been dealt, and as much as I respect Councillor Peter and what he's trying to achieve here, I think we have made changes late in the budgeting process in past years, and that has caused confusion to different degrees depending on who you talk to. We need to get to a point where we're returning to a surplus position. I do agree with Councillor Dean that we'll simply be shifting a problem for what may well be a very different chamber in the future. So unfortunately, I can't support this at this late stage, councillor Peter, but I do admire the intent behind it.
Thank you. Thanks for the debate. I'll put the motion that councillor Peters' motion is on the screen. All in favour? Those against? The motion's lost. Okay, so we now return to the recommendation that Karen has on the screen. That these will now go to public consultation. Is that right, Karen? That's with Councillor Collin?
So are we, that whole thing, that whole booklet you're talking about, because can we take other things out of it or not?
Now's the time.
Because I think we got that Droves encounter in there again, have we?
Yeah, that's in the draft budget plan. Yeah. Yeah, it's still in the strategic plan. I don't think you're going to remove that now, Colin.
Oh, it's just a bit embarrassing having it there, isn't it? Just,
Well, it's still there. It's there.
well, yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, Councillor Depp.
Yeah, through the chair, I think there's a motion on foot to look at that. As once we get through the annual business plan and budget, we'll try to bring that into some type of a process. I think we've also spoken about in the budget documents is to look at asset rationalisation. So I think it's potentially a part of that as well. So I think there's two processes that will take account of that. And I don't think there's a budgetary impact as such. It's more a philosophy and are we going to pursue that? Additionally, the new council as well within two years of an election has to set its own strategic plan. So it'll get picked up in several different methods.
Okay, thank you. So, Karen, the recommendations that's there.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, so I guess the recommendation that I had at the end of the presentation is what you see before you. So just to clarify, the first 2 points are as per the agenda papers, which is noting that the Audit and Risk Committee received the report presented to that committee at its 14th of April 2025 meeting. And second point, acknowledging that the Audit and Risk Committee concurs that those draft plans are sustainable as detailed in the attachments to that report. Thirdly, receives the updated draft plans tabled under item 4.2 and approves the revised documents tabled under item 4.2 for public consultation and the approval process, subject to minor formatting and grammatical amendments, the removal of Appendix A, a rating structure and policy, pages 48 to 51, and the provision of changes to rating sections that may occur due to valuer general valuation updates.
Thank you. Darryl?
Thank you. Through the chair, just a point of clarification, because I think this is one of those no surprise moments. If they adopt that, what does it mean for the rating rebate? That will go as it will be recouped as normal, or does it take it out? Just want to clarify so everyone knows and understands what you're voting for or to address it.
So at this point, through you, Mayor Bill, the rebate is included in the annual business plan and budget with a 15% threshold. Our modelling indicates that that would require a cost of about $20,000 to fund those rebates. Whether you apply that as an increase across the board or not, it probably makes a 5th or 6th decimal point adjustment to the rate in the dollar and therefore probably no change. It's that insignificant.
Thanks, Karen. So that means if you want to remove the cap, now's the time to act. If you don't, you're going to leave the cap there. It's $20,000. It's going to be absorbed. We'll fund it. Councillor Simon.
But I'd like to remove it. I think it just seems to be a hassle and just extra work for our staff for no good reason, really.
Okay, is there a second to Councillor Simon's suggestion? Yeah. That the cap be removed, so there'll be no cap on rates. So if currently it's suggested to be 15%. If your rates are above 15% of last year, you'll get the opportunity to get a rebate. It's estimated to cost us $20,000 this year, which can be absorbed. So the suggestion by Councillor Simon is that that cap be removed. We're looking for a second of Councillor. There'll be no rebate, yeah, which means the draft policy has to be changed. I mean, and you may want to consider this an election year. You might be pertinent to offer a election rate situation.
Thank you. Can I just understand the intention? So it's to remove it completely, not to self-fund it. Okay.
Councillor Dean.
Well, I'm not quite sure what the process is here, but I'm opposed to removing it because it has a minimum impact on the overall budget, but it has significant impact on those people who suffer a huge increase. And it does provide a bit of softening through the year.
Thanks, Councillor Dean. Councillor Martin.
I just had a question. How many ratepayers will it affect? I know we've got is it around about 20,000, but is it going to be because some people have suddenly got a 30% increase, or is it some we bring this in because people have got 17 or 18%? Because that there's a big difference there. If someone gets a stratospheric increase because for whatever reason their property has been revalued immensely, what's the number of ratepayers that you think this might impact?
Through the chair, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. It certainly has been modelled. If you recall, just looking at the graph in terms of where that 15% threshold crosses the lines, for primary production properties, you're talking about 5% of properties. So, yeah, 1 in 20 of a few thousand properties. And for residential, I think it was potentially around about the same number or slightly less. So not a great deal of properties. Yeah, I'd have to look up the modelling that can be provided, but certainly it's not the significant numbers that we've experienced in previous years. Certainly a lot flatter rate increase curves this year.
Thanks, Corin. Any further debate by Councillor Collin? You've got one more talk.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but no,
You gave it up.
yeah, I second it. Oh, no, someone pressed the button, but the reason I don't support it, it's 20 grand, it's not really worth worrying about. I know the staff don't like the phone call. It was the feedback I've got before. The other thing is that as I explained before in 21, 22 or 23, 24, but when we did that rebate, it actually was a mess. And then it's embedding the increase anyway. So I just think it's a waste of time for 20 grand. Why bother?
Okay, if there's no, Councillor Corin.
Through you, Mayor. So I guess we've just added some wording as point D to point 3, which is obviously approving those documents for public consultation subject to removing the discretionary rebate associated with the relief from rapid increases in property valuation. So, Caitlin, you probably just need to remove the subject to at point D. But yeah, that's the wording that achieves effectively what Councillor Simon, if he's going to move that, certainly does.
Okay, so let me get this correct. With that, this now becomes Councillor Simon moving that recommendation with that Part D in it, and Councillor Collins seconded. So do I understand we're going for that recommendation without the cap in it? Now, if we disagree with that, we'll lose the motion and we'll then re-put it with the cap in it. You understand? Okay. So we're now voting for the recommendation without the cap. All those in favour? Those against? The recommendation without the cap has been passed, carried. Thank you. Right. We can now move on. Thank you for that. 10, infrastructure and sustainability reports. Infrastructure monthly update from Jason. We had some rain at least to get some good roads done, Jason, and congratulations on Wosley's Road too. We've had tremendous praise for the condition of Wosley Road after the condition was in previously. So well done on that one. Are there any questions on that report? Hopefully get some more rain this week, Jason, get a bit more good grading done. Okay, there's a recommendation at the bottom there. Thank you, Councillor Michael. Seconded. Councillor Dean, all in favour? It's carried. Thank you. 11, strategy and economic development reports. Report from Sky and Derby, fantastic reports. Gather round, the bounce bus was very successful apparently. And the Probus group was very, very impressed with 4 days in Kapunda. They could have spent more here. So there you go. Are there any questions on that report? It's a very good report, isn't it? Right, there's a recommendation on the bottom of page 29. Councillor Fabio. Seconded, Councillor Michael. All in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Reports for information. Boundary reform update. This is the finalising of our boundary confrontation with Gawler. And it's just, Corey tells me this just has to be gazetted and then we sign off on it. So it's the process is finalising eventually. Temporary road closures were in action for Anzac Day, so it's just approving them. The quarterly update capital renewal program. Are there any questions on that?
No, probably just a comment.
Yeah, Councillor Moore.
Mayor Bill, that went and had a drive along Ebenezer Road this afternoon, and it's good to see that project's underway. It's been a long time coming, so well done.
So, Megan, you want to make any comments on that? No further questions. Thank you. Thank you, Annette. Seconded for that recommendation, which is on the bottom of page 41. Seconded by Fabio. All in favour? It's carried. Thank you. Reports for decision. CEO's report. Darryl wants to speak on.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. So I've made a couple of changes to the CEO report, which ultimately historically puts the appointments, but I've also tried to put some commentary on things that I think is my opportunity to discuss to you as a collective, as well as I think that the public might be interested in. So sometimes this will be a for decision report, as in the case today with the Gawler River Flood Management Authority, and I understand there'll be some debate on that, which is fair enough, and sometimes it might be for information report if it's just receiving a noting. In terms of what we've got here, the key themes today is we are going to be working as a team on a community engagement framework. That was certainly one of the things that interview I positioned strongly, is that we need to be engaging with our community regularly, and we need to articulate what that looks like in terms of a minimum standard and a standard we should be striving for. Because I've been able to do this type of work before, we've got a very willing team. We're going to do that with internal resources, and I believe we'll be able to put that to council probably around July. Hopefully, that's what we're aiming for. The other thing is, and this slipped through the cracks, is the elected member allowance remuneration tribunal. I always think that when there's an opportunity for a submission, we should try to put something in. So Corey distributed the feedback at a session. It fell short of actually recommending whether there's an increase or decrease for elected members, but it at least articulated the current situation. understand that has been extended slightly. So I think we may have 2 days if you did want to do an emergency workshop or something like that to strongly consider it. But I think you should have the option to look at your terms and conditions like everyone else does. That being said, there's the same opportunity for a CEO review, and because I've just started, I haven't taken up that submission or brought it into a process. I think just negotiated a contract, let that be. And so not living to my own expectations in terms of supplying that, but I think it's the right choice at this point in time. So that slipped through the cracks. In terms of the way that there's already been motions on foot around Seppeltsford, so we have updated that through Mayor Bill, a letter to the Premier, and we put that there for your information. I think it's open and transparent. It shows it to the community the steps that we're taking, and alerting you the fact that we're attending the Mayor and myself are attending the LGA AGM. And then the other one, which is for debate and potentially could have been a standalone, but it is a committee that I participate in, is there's a decision to be made by the council in terms of supporting the Gawler River FMA in terms of making that consideration. And thank you to Councillor Ross for engaging on conversation with that. I guess my perspective is we need to make a decision to adopt that, endorse it. That's my recommendation, but I do understand that there'll be some debate on that, as well as just need to put to the attention is that in terms of doing this budget, they have brought around $750,000 of their own money into it for the business plan, and there is the money will be going towards that as well as safety. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Daryl. Thanks for your summary of what you're doing. Daryl's mentioned the Gawler River Flood Management draft financing thing. I also attend the meetings with Daryl, and they're hoping to get this final plan through so that they can then be in a position to seek funding for further developments. And then the very strong feeling at the meeting was that we try and pass the whole thing over to the state government where it should have been all along. So we're hoping to get it into a position where it can be transferred back to state government or get them to agree to take it back, which is really where it should be. Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Simon.
To the comment you just made, so what time frame are you thinking? Because I mean, if it after me, I would want to not pay them from today onwards, or just never pay them actually. So how long we're going to have to keep paying until that happens?
I think it's a situation where you've got to have something that's in top-notch condition before they'll take it on. It's a bit like when we took over Gomersall Road, we had to have it spit and span before they'd look at it. So I think we've got to get it to that level. That's my feeling. I don't know if Daryl's got a thought of that.
Look, through the chair, I think and myself and Councillor Collins spoke a lot, and we were probably in agreement on 90% of it. Well, I'm certainly on agreement that if there's a framework that says we're responsible for maintenance plus CPI, that we should be looking at maintenance plus CPI. Where we differ a little bit is I think that council, because there's new money coming in and there's a safety audit, that council could potentially do it this financial year, but set a very strong signal moving forward that we won't tolerate anything outside of the agreement. But I think I don't want to go too much. I want you guys to be able to debate it with, Councillor Collins putting his perspective too. But I think we all agree. Well, I don't know if we all agree. I certainly think that you can't set a budget. If we're fighting over 2% above CPI, and this is a 100% increase on maintenance. It's a lot, and I think those external agencies that raise things in an insurmountable amount affects our budgets and our other opportunities. So I don't disagree with the fact that we should be alerting to the fact that this is not tolerable. We should be sending a strong signal.
Thanks, Daryl. Councillor Collins.
Yeah, there's a lot of worries in this. I just got a question for you, Bill. Are these people confident or not?
Well, the CEO is a experienced operator, so he has got capacity. He had to go through a selection criteria to be chosen for the job. So he should be competent, as competent as we could possibly get, Colin.
I just find it amazing how we can go through, like for the last since I've been on the council, we've been asked to give extra money above, to do the business case. So we go into the business case. I said last year in the chamber, I don't want to pay any more money after this year, which was, Richard said, he actually agreed. And that's where I thought we're going to sit. And this year they're asking for another, last year was 36, this year it's 47. The reason they're giving is that they have to find out if the wall is structurally strong enough to put 10% on it, to make it 10% bigger. So they've gone and taken a business case to the state government. It took them 4 years to write it. It was underwritten by us. And they don't even know if the wall's strong enough to handle an extra 10%. So now we have to pay for an audit independently of that at our cost. And then you look at the reasons for it is so they want to build more houses at Buckland Park. Like, why are we doing this? It just seems just ludicrous that we keep chucking the same money to incompetent people. Like it is, that to me is incompetence, to do a business case on a wall and not even know if the wall is structurally strong enough to increase the size.
I mean, it's not quite that simple, Colin. That they had to do a safety audit on the dam after 20 years, and the only way that they can do a proper safety wall is actually drill through the existing wall, and the cost of those was $20,000 a hole or something. It was an incredible amount of money to put, and that was just to get the safety standard for the 20-year approval, not to go higher. That was just to get it to. I mean, the cost in this thing is just.
But if you put that, I saw that as well. But if you're doing anything like that, your maintenance bill, so we're paying 20 grand a year in maintenance or whatever it is, you put 10% a year aside to make sure that when your audit comes up, you pay for your audit. Like, you're going to have an audit in year 20. So you put money aside for your audit. Surely you don't just get to your audit time and go, oh, we'll just tax everyone more. Well, maybe your government does, but just anyway.
Councillor Simon.
Yeah, just, I mean, I agree with what Councillor Collins says. I mean, we just got $20,000 as rebates to people that have high increase in their rates to try to, rein in our spending, whatever. And here we're giving away $47,000. I mean, I would find it very hard to look in a ratepayer's eyes and say, like, what's his benefit of spending whatever $2 or $3 of his wage money for that? Like, there's no benefit. What we gain from having that dam and protecting downstream somebody that wants to build in a floodplain, or some insurance companies that don't want to pay out in case of a flood, like that, it doesn't do us any good. So I would try to get out of this as fast as we can. And I understand there's some legal issues, but if we can now at least send a strong signal, as Dale was said, to say, like, we don't want to. I mean, I'm even against the maintenance. Why do we have to pay for maintenance? But just it has nothing to do with us, literally nothing. So I'd like to get out of it as fast as we can.
Okay, well, we have a recommendation there that we received the CEO's received the report titled CEO April Update, which includes the Gawler River Floodplain Authority draft annual business plan and annual business budget amendments 4, 5 and 6. Does someone want to move that motion? Darryl?
Through the chair, thank you. As it currently stands, there's been a bit of debate on that, and I can't send a strong signal unless you give me the resolution to be able to put that in writing to them for the future years. So if you do this, I would suggest that in 12 months' time, we're going to be coming with the same argument, which is we shouldn't have paid it and we shouldn't do it moving forward. I think if you want me to be able to action a letter, even if it does support this year, I need to have something to hold on to say that in the future, we're not going, we want budgets to be produced based on our maintenance obligations only. So just to consider that, otherwise we'll probably have this discussion in 12 months' time again.
So how would you change that recommendation to cover that, Darryl?
well, I would be essentially saying that approves that and something along the lines that council will puts the committee on notice that it will not approve future budgets outside its maintenance contractual obligations. And you could probably go, without the explicit motion of council, something like that, something along those lines. Corey has got a draft if you want to consider that, yeah.
Sorry, through the chair, the question is whether the motion goes as it is to pay for this year, and then if it's a separate motion, or if you want to include it in this one.
Included in this one, I think.
Okay.
Question.
Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, just a question. What about if we don't pay? We can send a strong motion tonight by not paying. I know.
It's a complex issue. It then goes to, has to be sent to the minister. The minister can then gives us direction to.
That can be moved as well.
Yeah. You can move that if you want to, yeah. But it does delay everything a month, which delays the work in the dam itself. Delay our budget too?
No, not.
What's it?
No, we're out of consultation. Through the chair, I think the budget impact is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Corin, you did tell me today, we budgeted on 40,000 in our draft. So there's about $8,000 shortfall in what we did in our draft budget. So we will take a little bit of a hit on that.
You're right, Corey, or? Okay, so this is with Darryl's added bit that we're making a point to the chair for RMA that we won't be doing a similar thing next year. Gives us something to talk about as a resolution to the board. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Dean, thank you. Councillor Michael, all in favour? Hang on again. All in favour? 3 against? Okay, so the motion's lost. But what would you like to move? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, that council receive and endorse the Gawler River Floodplain Management Authority approves Light Council's membership contribution financial year of maintenance of $20,792 and request the Mayor write on behalf of Council to the Gawler River Floodplain Association advising the Council will limit its future financial contributions to its proportional share of maintenance costs for existing GRFMA assets, indexing annually according to the CPI, and that no further financial contributions will be supported unless separately and specifically approved through council on an annual basis, on the annual budget process. You get that?
So we'd like to speak on that, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, I tried to do this last year and the year before, and I didn't get to where I want to go. I know there's going to be a dispute about this. I'm moving this motion, acknowledging that and fully aware that is what is to happen in the future. If we have to back down, I don't mind in the future, but this is a political point that has to be made, and we have to make it in strong terms. And I think this motion, if it becomes a resolution, will result in a, telling them that, we're not happy about what's going on. And I just think it's rude to ask for an extra 20K when last year they said they weren't coming back.
Okay, just a question, Corey. Do we need to receive the CEO's beforehand? All right, so can we do that after we do this? Okay, thank you. So if someone would like to second that? Councillor Fabio had his hand up. Would you like to speak, Councillor Fabio? Would anyone like to speak for or against the motion? Any comments, Darryl?
Through the chair, as I've said a number of times, we respond to resolutions. I've got no problem implementing that to the best of my ability. That's fine.
Councillor Dean.
I do. I've just got a question. Number one, which says we receive and endorse the Gawler River Floodplain Management Authority current business plan and draft annual budget. Is that consistent with number two?
Should it just be receives rather than endorses?
Whatever, and the business plan, whatever out here of that is. Then there's inconsistency, that's the one. Is there areas we need to modify?
All right, the movers and seconders happy to remove that?
Another way we get around it is have one as a motion, and then 2 and 3 as another motion. So, receive the notes, receive the notes.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, look, through the chair, I think receives is fine. At the end of the day, even though I suggested you send the signal, it's not really our problem. What we're dealing with is our financial contribution, and then they need to take that into their own internal process.
Okay. If there's no one else want to speak, I'll put the motion. All in favour? That is carried unanimously. Okay, can we now just have a motion that we receive the report as in 13.1? Just removes 2. Receives the report titled CEO's April 2026 update as presented to the ordinary meeting. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Dean, seconded Councillor Simon, all in favour? Thank you. Go, Caitlin. (13.2) Citizenship Ceremony Report. You ready, Caitlin? Receives a report titled Policy Review for the Citizenship Ceremony. Are there any questions on that report? Someone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Ellison, Councillor Martin. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. (13.3) Consent to grant an easement affecting 13 and 15 Flat Road, Roseworthy. This is just a procedural matter. Move Simon, seconded Lynette. All in favour? Thank you. There, Anthony, come and bring it up here and we'll sign it now for you. Oh, are we? Come on, girls. You're right. Okay. 13.4 differential rates for primary production land in urban and employment zones. Kyron's been working very hard on this and we've had several discussions on it. It's an excellent report that he's presented to us. I'll speak, Phil.
Thanks, Mayor. So I guess we're getting at the pointy end of our investigation into differential rates by locality. So we've bundled up the community consultation submissions. I guess due to the number of them, we haven't published them in the agenda because there's a small number, but the elected members have received those submissions under separate cover. I guess that did cause us to have a look at some further analysis around the merits of adopting differential rates by location, just in terms of how aligned various locations are with the three purposes that council has been exploring applying this particular differential rate. So hence it is a bit of a subjective analysis, so it's not necessarily quantitative, but we've tried to categorize different areas of the council in terms of alignment with the purpose for this. Hence, we've come up with some high, moderate and low alignment sort of areas of council, which has led to particularly the table that's included as an attachment, which sort of shows how aligned different areas of the council are and different planning zones. And the recommendation before council, I guess, gives council the opportunity to sort of pick certain categories if they wish to move forward. What I will say is if a motion is put and lost, I think the council ought to make a subsequent motion to put the matter to bed so that we can at least proceed with public consultation under differential rates that do not differentiate by locality. So that's probably my only additional bit of commentary, but happy to answer any questions on the analysis or the recommendation that is before the council.
Councillor Simon.
Thanks, Mayor Bill. So I'm generally happy to just move it with all the highly aligned, so the green bits. One question I do have to Karen is the two blocks that are in Golden Belt under employment. I think they're 108 Dealey Highway, lot 108 Dealey Highway, and I think lot 109 Bernard Court. Where are they? Like, what are they? I have a hard time to see what that actually is. How to find that on any maps or whatever.
Right, do you know?
So I believe that they are at the southern end of the Kingsford Regional Industrial Estate. It's current subdivision in process. You may have seen some signs as you enter the Tealy Highway.
Yeah, it is too.
Yeah.
So they're already being developed anyway, and they will get rated differently anyway once if they're
and so we've had that through, and that's what will happen in those growth areas is as primary production land is progressively converted by development applications into firstly vacant land and then industrial or residential land. You get a natural conversion through vacant land and and those other higher uses. So that is ongoing, and we've already had a couple of properties sort of change throughout our Valuer General data that we've received this financial year. So the first rates data we received in March, listed 30 odd properties, and as we've had updates, we've had properties change, and we've also had through the consultation process, landowners come in and say, "Hey, I object to this particular primary production land use. In fact, it's really never been primary production. We've been residential." So we've sort of had people come and object to their land use through this process as well. So we're only talking a couple of properties, but some changes there. That's
okay. Are you moving the?
Yeah, if I can, I'll be happy to move it with just the green
with the high
line properties in it. Yeah.
Anyone like to second that recommendation? Councillor Collin, like to speak on it, Councillor Collin?
No, I think Kyron and his team's done a great job to get to where we have. It's been well thought out. It's gone to the community. I just think if we go for the high this year and see what happens, it might get that much kickback that it doesn't go, but we'll give it a go this year.
Okay, any further speakers? There's not. Sorry, what? Sorry, Corey.
Sorry, through the chair, just want to ask Councillor Zeller if he's happy with the recommendation as it's shown on the screen.
Oh, sorry. So it's the high blocks. Roseworthy.
Okay, there was also a point 2 of the recommendation. It needed some discussion or deleting if not applicable.
Point 2, notes Council's earlier resolution at this meeting to release the draft annual business plan, long-term finance public consultation following the recommendation. This is because we've got increased income. Is that the reason?
Just checking.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Really, that point 2 just notes the council's earlier decision to release the annual business plan and budget for public consultation. So it was just noting that, which it's correct, because that has obviously, if council didn't pass that earlier in the evening, it couldn't note that. So it's a bit of it was a placeholder in terms of the recommendation.
So it's fine being there.
It is correct.
Righto. So we can leave it there, Corey. That's the side. All right. With that information, we'll vote on the motion. All in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. It's been a long one and well done. Yeah, Corey, it's taken a lot of work. 14 point. Where we are. Questions on notice? There are no questions on notice. Are there any questions without notice? (16) Motions on notice. 16.1 stop sign request Kangaroo Flat. Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Mayor Bill. When I took Daryl for a drive, when we met, we went down by the intersection. I know it's a deep road, but it's dangerous. Once again, this morning, the trucks don't want to stop, so they roll and hope nobody's coming, and then they pull out in front, and then you've got a vehicle travelling at 100 that's got to brake, and it's just a regular occurrence. And as I state, I can see that we're going to have a near miss, or we're going to have a nasty accident there. It just seems to be getting worse and worse. There seems to be a lot more traffic coming along Muddlawirra Road into Redbanks Road, and there's always a lot of traffic coming into that intersection. So I'd really like DIT to put a stop sign there or look at something, and in our discussions, Daryl came up with the idea that he would write to them. So hence my motion.
Yeah. Second, Councillor Michael. Daryl.
Yeah, through the chair. So what I'm flagging here, just for, I guess, transparency of everyone here and even staff in attendance, is when council feels strongly enough about something, I think things are received differently with the weight of council. When we write a letter and say there's been a council resolution, it goes into a different process. It lands on a minister and works downwards. When it comes through as a motion and we don't write to council or the administration do it, it comes to colleague, and we try to do our best. But then sometimes it puts staff in an awkward position where council's expecting some type of action and staff are coming and saying, well, they said no. So this then puts it in the public arena. It's something you care about, but then the response gets tabled as well. And then it puts it to bed one way or the other, and then we're not the intermediary, we're actually doing the job of council. So I just think this particular way is a really good way of putting on people's desks the stuff that you're passionate about, and more importantly, the stuff that the majority of council, because the council's decision is not one person, it's the majority of council. If you believe strongly in it, we present it and you get the feedback directly. So I just always been in favour of this type of an approach.
All right. We've got a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Then we have 16.2. My motion with regard to agenda timing. As you would have been aware by the email I sent around, I had a memo from former CEO, acting CEO, Mark McShane, who was who voiced this to me quite regularly, that the timing for our agendas putting out was making incredible workload for the staff. It's also slowing the process down, that they were always writing reports from the month before and not getting the reports in time for the following month, and we had lots of supplementary agenda items coming through. So I've moved this motion following his memo and his strong feeling that would improve the productivity of our staff and the workings of our council. It still gives us 7 days of reading time to cover things. Thanks, Councillor Michael. 5 clear days, but it gets you on the 7th. You get 7 days before comes out on the Wednesday, so you get it, and then the Tuesday's the meeting. So it's 5 clear days, but it's 6. So would anyone like to speak for the motion or against the motion? If not, we'll put the motion. So if there's no one to speak, I'll move them, put the motion. All those in favour? That's carried. All those against? 1. Thank you. Thank you for that. You bastard. Oh, this is still public, isn't it? Okay, we now go to motions without notice. Councillor Peter has moved a motion, put a motion without notice. Peter, I would prefer that if we had time to get a response. So I'd rather you put this as a motion with notice for the next meeting. I don't think it's that urgent this time. We are reviewing, as Darryl said, we are reviewing the property ownership factor coming up. But so if you'd like to move this with a motion, give the staff an opportunity to put a bit of discussion with it. That next council meeting, you present it as a motion with notice, on notice. Thank you. So we now go to confidential items. And the first confidential item, 18.1, is the land management agreement and infrastructure agreement with Zaman Proprietary Limited. Oh, shit, got to move into confidence. Seconded. Councillor Fabio scratching his ear. All in favour? Thank you. So we're now going to move into confidence.